It took me much too long. I've been on Zoom calls all day, so that was confusing.
It's okay.
Hello. Sorry.
So yes, Rich, go ahead and do your magic. All right.
Okay, we are live.
Okay, so let's convene and get started and cover what we got to cover. I will start off by going over the agenda. We have a couple of changes to make. We are adding as an old business item the document that David Carroll sent having to do with changing our tax status or corporation categorization. Under new business, resident of 300 Janet Harvelchuk has an idea for an event that she'd like to propose. So we'll put that under new business. I'm calling it eco event because that's what she called it. We agreed that when we get through the rest of our agenda items, we will adjourn the meeting and move into an executive session to discuss a couple of administrative topics for the board. And I think that's all the changes I made note of. Is anybody else aware of any other changes to the agenda? Okay. Moving on to the consent calendar. Thank you, Celia, for the minutes and the BAIP reports. And thank you, Ethan, for finding time to do the treasurer's report and send it around. I have those documents open. Does anybody have any comments, questions, suggestions about those things? I'm just reviewing all three of those documents before we move on. Yeah, I didn't see anything on my first look that I had questions about. Anybody else? Okay, would somebody like to move to accept those three documents as they were circulated?
I'll place motion for that.
Thank you, Ethan. Second?
Second.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so let's accept those three documents as circulated. Moving on to the first item of old business. Let's recap our very exciting, very successful event on Thursday, the 26th, August table. You saw my emails, and I hope that I sufficiently registered my enthusiasm. I thought it was fabulous. So, Debbie, why don't you go ahead and
Yes, so happy to. First of all, I think it was such a win. And the things that came through were, first of all, when I hear neighbors who had never met each other before from the same building or that reconnected because their son was he was the coach of their son's little league or whatever the connections were, they were so joyful, so joyful. And I just saw up and down the table, first of all, a total intergenerational experience and just happy faces and sort of disbelieving faces on some level of people who didn't realize that we could do this. And I just think it was very, very positive. There was one person that I did get an email, which makes it real. I did get an email from somebody who said somebody was asked to move because their party needed the space to expand. They moved to another table and didn't feel welcome, and so they left. So that happened once out of, I think, 400 to 500 people. So I think that's good odds. But it's always a reminder of, we're figuring this out. And I think it was a fantastic first go at it. I will go back to like all of the pieces that worked were one, it was a partnership of the neighborhood organizations coming together to make this possible, right? So the West Prep Academy was a tremendous donator of tables and chairs. The bid was fantastic in all that they did to help, including staff, including tables, including garbage pickup, all the things, and coming and cleaning up ahead of time. We had the Marseille donate tables right there on the street. And then who am I missing? Hosteling International also donated tables. So we had to rent no tables or chairs, which is the big cost of the event. So to get that and the way that we got it through partnership with the organizations, I thought was just remarkable and wonderful. In terms of the staffing, I go back to the youth ambassadors, which really came via the West Prep Academy and then the Mount Sinai residents. They were amazing and they made it possible. And basically putting the tables down, picking them up, it all happened literally. If you walked down the street an hour after we closed, you wouldn't have known there was an event there, which was sort of from the New York way. But I thought that was tremendous, and a credit to them. Um, I'm curious what other people think in terms of what the experience was. I think there's things we could do differently, of course, but to get almost every car removed for alternate site parking was about a 95% win. And then I think it worked really wonderfully. I'd love to hear more feedback of those who could make it.
Debbie, sorry to correct you, but you left out one critical person who made it work. And congrats. I mean, it was fabulous that you joined the Block Association, that you made all this happen. So thank you.
Oh, it was such a delight. Such a delight.
Well
Let's
done.
all take the win.
I
Exactly.
second what Rich said. I mean, you took this
Very
ball and
nice.
you ran with it, and you just I mean, you just have this infectious kind of enthusiasm for things, and I think it injected a lot of life into the event, and it was it was a pretty amazing event. It was just all these people. It was so simple in a way. They were just sitting there eating their food
Yeah.
with their friends. There was so much cross-table stuff happening, people who didn't know each other before, as you said, sharing food. Gary's wife made this amazing lasagna, and she was just walking up and down offering people.
I love that.
And
Love
it
it.
was just a good feeling, and people have come up to me since then, and a lot of people have said, I didn't know about this. If I'd known, I would have come. I was kind of curious what the final number, as far as you can tell, was, how many people actually came.
I don't have an exact number, and we should all agree on one. So, in other words, Gail Berman, she said it was 600. We had 400 chairs, and we basically filled them all, and then there were people roaming besides. So I feel like it's like a 500 is a big fat round number, but I don't have an exact science for that, to be honest. And so I did get the papers of who the greeters were able to sign in, and I think the benefit of that is that we'll get at least those emails we have because they signed up. At least we have a way to communicate to them, but it's not an exact science by any means in terms of, checking people checking in. So I just think that it was a 400 to 500 person event for sure. The precinct folks came, the officers, who was it? Micah and Gail, and there was somebody else of the electeds came. So it definitely got people's attention, and I think they'll come again, actually. And to your point, literally, it's the couple surprising things for me are marketing is hard in this regard because we put the signs up and people take them down. Like, oh, so that was a phenomenon. Apparently, that this is not the first time that's happened, but that was a constant. And we don't have a social media handle. So that was a little bit limiting, which is probably good for the first year. It would have been bonkers if we had gone social, because I actually saw when we did do that through the West Side Rag and through I Love Upper West Side, that actually got a lot of traction. So I think it kept it manageable this year. But that's just something to consider when we get to hopefully do this again. So the marketing is a part of, I think, what we need to just think through and then communicating with folks. And then it'll get better, my sense, from my experience, it'll get better with the volunteers each year because they know what they're signing up for and there's an expectation and it's sort of just, there's more people know the idea and it sort of works itself out going forward.
I think that
But I did go through receipts and all of that also, which I sent to Gary and Ethan ahead of this. And I think all in, we end up at 3,500. I was thinking it could be 2,500 or to 3,000, but it ends up at about 3,500, which I hope is acceptable.
I think that's what we were expecting on it. So that's great. But that one thing that isn't accounted for on that, a couple of things aren't accounted for are the payments to the people that were brought there through the bid, and we'll need to add that into it. And also, if we go ahead with what Peter's suggesting, to actually give some resources to the bid for all of their time they spent in it. So we'll have at some point. I didn't expect that. We didn't know what we were doing when we made the budget. We didn't know what kind of an event we were going to do. So I'm not in any way begrudging the amount that we spent. I think it was worth every cent of it. And I think it's also going to grow in not only in numbers but also in creativity. My wife Lynn said when she saw that wonderful table of 11 beside us, with their china and their
All right.
and the event materials and all the rest of that kind of stuff, and then saw that incredible table of the women who had all the flowers. She said to me, "We gotta up our game here. We're gonna get a good crowd from our building, and we're gonna really do it next year." And I think that
Exactly. Now there's a bar to exceed. But okay, so I welcome just if we could take a minute of things that need improvement or just notes so that while they're top of mind, I welcome them and I'll capture them.
I just want to jump in, anything that was spent on this event, obviously, whether it's within budget or over budget, needs to be reimbursed. I had been consulted along the way of, hey, I may need to do this. Can I spend more? And I had said yes on behalf of the organization in that process. So yes, Debbie, all of your out of pocket should be reimbursed. And yeah, we did commit to paying for some helpers, especially once we knew we were going to have to move those chairs around and rent a truck and, all of that. So yeah, that's all for sure. And I agree, definitely well worth it.
Great.
Anybody else?
The question I would have is what I put in the email that people were saying they'd love to see this more often. So is this an annual event? Is this what's the right frequency for doing this? And I say that given that I think it was just a fabulous success.
I'll chime in. My sense is it's annual because there's a Halloween event, there's a Broadway Bites, and this is coming in new. My sense is if you have maybe a few big events throughout the year, that's manageable and still top of mind. But what have you guys done in the past, I guess is more a question.
Most of our events are annual events. And our big fundraiser was always in the spring. This isn't a fundraiser, but it's a big community visibility thing, which is, I think, somewhat more important to us at this moment in time than bringing in dollars, since we're not funding a security guard. Spring is good because we don't have a lot of other things planned then. Fall, as you said, we always have Halloween. In December, we have caroling. Our annual meeting is indoors. And before it gets nice out, usually March, April-ish. Sometimes if we do an additional public panel, like Gary organized for us, the one about the streetscape, That's another indoor event that we can do over the winter. So I think keeping something going on in the spring is great. Although in a way it was a lot less work than putting together the yard sale. It still was a lot of work. And I think we have to be realistic as a board of time commitments and how much effort and energy, and also because it is expensive. If we're spending several $1,000s to make this happen, but we're not bringing in any income source, we have to think about how often do we want to do that.
On the fundraising question, the income, one option would just be to charge. Another would be to ask people to contribute, not necessarily to join, but to contribute. And another would be to, as we're promoting this, say, like, join the Block Association so we can do more things like this and promote membership through the event.
Right, and I think the more we focus and get traction within the neighborhood, the more we can do that. This time to get it launched, we did broaden our reach and we had people from all over the place. It wasn't confined just to our neighborhood.
I
And
think
I don't know how much people outside the neighborhood are going to want to donate toward our activities. Peter, go ahead.
yes, I think we could easily do a pay what you wish suggested donation and set an amount that way. My only suggestion for possible improvement is we didn't really think about, a lot of people were asking what could they do with leftover food? Could they donate it someplace? And I was wondering if that's something that we might think about for the future.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I also was wondering about trash, whether we were separating recyclables from compost from, or was it all just trash?
Yes, I think that's another thing we can take a closer look at.
For sure, we can take a closer look at what worked is that there were people, and it was really the youth ambassadors and the Mount Sinai folks who were just patrolling and picking up along the way, like during the event even. I don't know how mindful they were of separating, but it made it very easy at the end.
Yeah, I saw them doing that. That was great.
I do know that at the West 104th Street yard sale, at the end, they come through with a recyclables bag and a trash bag, and each vendor table or every two vendor tables share one, and they dump all their stuff in. So we could do something like that. I mean, it would not be complicated at all to add that for next time.
Okay, so
All
there
right.
we have three things to think about.
Right. Frequency, trash, leftovers.
No,
Related,
no. The other one was the suggested pay what you wish
donations and such.
and suggested donation. Yeah.
Right. Okay. All good. Amy and I have been having a conversation with Erin over at the bid, who read at first our enthusiasm for how successful the event was as, okay, so why don't we do it again yet this summer? And yeah, I said, not happening. But she said, but they're excited and they love the format and they are interested in doing it, but she was concerned about stepping on toes, that somehow we would object if they did a similar thing at another time. And I assured her that we don't have any ownership of this forever, that this existed before we even gave it a try. And one of the beauties of it that Debbie and her business partner conceived is that it is easily replicated by any group, organization, community. So Debbie, I told Erin that she could get in touch with you about your willingness to be advisory or to participate on a more active level, but I wasn't going to commit you, even though she knows that we, the Block Association, are not doing it. I told her that she could check with you about what she
Perfect.
could expect from you.
Yeah, that's perfect. I'm happy to talk to her.
All right.
But I agree, the Block Association doing another one this summer would be
It would be the death of me
overkill.
for sure. So can't do it.
Just a final note, I would go back to, I thought during this third week, I liked that a lot. I thought really that worked out great. When it's like the lightest week of the year, we could do it from 6 to 8 p.m. without darkness. And it felt like a good end of school time. So except missing Rich for more of what we hoped to have him, I think it was an interesting time as opposed to trying to do a weekend. So we can just keep that note.
I'll add timing on the list of things to revisit when we get closer to getting organized for next time.
Hey, well done on the rain too, by the way.
Exactly.
I didn't
we'll have
dare
to-
complain about how cold it was, given how hot it had been, and that we didn't have any serious rain. I was freezing.
One other
Somehow
question. Oh, go ahead, Deb.
Somehow that worked out. There was a sprinkle like 15 minutes before, and then we were clear.
They were just trying to scare us and wake us up.
Exactly.
Now that Debbie is a board member, I am going to figure out how to get her added to our Google Drive, the Block Association Google Drive that Ron Slesky created for us, so that she can upload all of her notes and materials and the photos and the videos and all that stuff. If anybody else has material relevant, we'll create a longest table folder and pop it all in there. And Debbie, either I'll figure out how to do that myself, or I'll ask the guy who set us up to do it, because it's just been a while since I was in there, and I don't have my notes with me where I am on how it all works and the passwords and such.
No problem. And I have the photographers and videographers did beautiful work. So there's so much. I'm not sure what to do with all of it, but it's where I go back to, or if there's no interest in social channels for the Block Association, right? I don't know who would manage that. So, but at least the website, we can put pictures and video.
And I think it's always been a question of the who, not lack of interest. We haven't had a person who was willing to take that under his or her wing.
I might be if we want to discuss that, assuming it's a separate topic, but I'd be willing to put together social media.
In your spare time, Ethan?
Amazing.
That would be wonderful. Video. Oh, we can ask Caitlin to create a tab at the website that's devoted to the longest table, and just put all kinds of stuff in that tab, so that every time we need a pick-me-up and we want to look back at how good it was, we can just go to that tab, and so can anybody else.
Perfect.
One other brainstorm idea is there any point in, as an additional event or a combined event, doing something like the Bloomingdale Bites, but as the longest table? So combine getting restaurants to serve food with doing it on the street instead of in the youth hostel.
It may be that once the bid organizes one, that could be a natural outgrowth. And I think we'll know better once that happens.
Mm-hmm. And that could be it would be a paid event to pay the restaurants.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say one thing about the restaurants, because we did give it the college try to do some outreach to restaurants, and we did have some participation from Just For You, from the Indian restaurant, who passed out samosas, and one other restaurant that just stopped by our table and dropped off these wonderful, fruit compote type of things, and we didn't even get a chance to really get their name so we could thank them for it. But the when the her name is Wan Chen, very similar to the person who runs the ping pong club. And when I told her about the longest table, and she just loved the idea, and she said, "Oh, I'm going to be out there with a tray of food and a card to give to people, and I'll sign each card and say, come to the restaurant and you'll get a discount." And this is a core interest of the Columbus Amsterdam bid, of course, but we just there was so much to do in the run up to the event that we were not able to really systematically do an outreach to restaurants. But we have the idea of that, so I guess that goes into a number 4 idea for the future. If we could plan on how do we get restaurants even more engaged, and that will also be music to the ear of the bid, since that's such a core constituency of theirs.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other thoughts having to do with longest table? Okay, because David Carroll is on the Zoom and he is here for a particular topic, I'm going to move things around a little bit and skip from longest table to tax status so that he can speak to us and be on his way if he cares to. So David, if you can hear me.
Yeah, thanks very much. And
unmute.
Can you hear me, everybody? Thank you for your consideration, since I didn't send this to you till earlier. I've been had a couple of unexpected things happen that I'm trying to catch up on things. This was to kind of recap what we talked about before and to have something in writing for your records of what I would propose to do. And I think we talked about it in May, and haven't really changed it much other than to kind of get it all down and kind of explain the background. I thought that would be helpful for the association.
Very much. Thank you for doing it.
For minutes. Yeah, no, I meant to do it like a month ago. And so my next plan would be to, if it looks okay with everybody, and it would be to start drafting a charter for the new company to send for the board to look at, and maybe have some alternate proposal, make some suggestions for charitable purposes that I'm getting from other plaque associations. Be sure we could get it approved by the IRS. So and that would be the next step. Once that you sign off on it, it's pretty quick to file it, and then filing the form with the IRS takes a little longer. If you're a smaller organization like it would be, form an EZ form, the filing fee is I think I said $275, and I'd like to support the association. I'll make contributions to pay for the fees. Just
thank you. That's very generous.
It's nothing, but just on that light, before I could forget, I sent in a contribution in a little prepaid envelope, and it came back from the post office, said vacant, unable to forward. Sent it to the little pre-printed form, PO Box 1940, and the post office sent it back to me. Is there something wrong? I don't know who handles that, so I just wanted to mention it while
I usually get the stuff at the post office, but they're notoriously unreliable. They sometimes go several weeks before they put anything in the box, and sometimes.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
So I think it's. I haven't heard of this before.
I mailed it in at the post office, and they sent it back to me saying there was no, that the PO Box 1940 returned to sender, vacant, unable to forward. So I don't know if there's something wrong with your post office box. I was asking. But
we recently renewed it and did some paperwork on it. I don't know.
I'll mail it again and see what happens.
It's that post office is so dysfunctional. It does not surprise me, but I'm wondering if might it make more sense to just drop it off with either Gary or Ethan? then try mailing it again.
Happy to do that wherever, I don't know where that would be, but happy to do it.
I think the bigger issue is whether it's happening to other people.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's why I was wondering if anyone, this is the first time it ever happened to me. But I didn't mean to get off the topic. So I think we could actually, get the entity organized, by the fall. Getting the tax approval takes a little longer. IRS is way backed up on things, and that might take a while. But anyway, I just wanted to have the whole thing, the thought I had, what my thought process was, why, because we were formed so long ago and they changed the law and we're not considered charitable and you can't amend it, so why we should form a new thing. I just want to have it all kind of documented, because I just sort of talked about it. And if people have any questions about what I wrote, please let me know.
I have one question, which is very simple.
Yeah.
Does the new organization have to have a significantly different name?
No, just should be different enough that we could keep track of it. I know, I think we talked about, I can't remember what we talked about for a name last time, but you might say fund or something to kind of make it clear it's,
Okay.
it's for charitable purposes. And that the main thing is we're going to have to keep careful track. It shouldn't be that hard because you probably won't get all that many donations, but if the IRS ever comes and asks, we have to show, yes, this money was contributed and this is what it was used for. Either directly by the entity, or if they could give it to the other entity to do things, but it'd be better if the entity did it directly. That's why the other expense, I don't know how much Chase charges you for a bank account, would be to have another bank account. We need a separate bank account for the new entity to make it clear that the money's not getting mixed together. I don't know. Do they the association has a bank account now, right?
Well, we have a bank account. We have two accounts, actually. We also have a CD account on it. But
I see. Okay.
But I don't think it charges anything. I mean.
Okay. I don't know what
charge on the lake to get checks from them and other kinds of things like that. But otherwise, there's no monthly charge.
So I apologize for been a lot of delays on this. If anyone has any questions, let me know. My next step is to send people the proposal of the charter to look at.
I have two questions. One has to do with money flow, which is, I know that there are stipulations about that we can move money from one account to the other, but not from the other to the one. So the money that gets donated by people who are going to consider their contributions tax deductible, that money has to only be spent on purposes that would be covered by the charter,
right? So
that account.
That money, I'll call it NUCO, like I said in my little summary. NUCO can get money from the old association, its parent company, but it
just can't give it
money up to it. Yeah.
Okay.
And
so,
presumably that'll be okay, because the main thing is, as I said, my understanding was this all sort of came up because there were, foundations offering, but you had to be a 501 to take it.
Right. So for instance, the event that we just had, the longest table, we purchased items like tablecloths and flowers and food for the workers so they would be able to eat and drink. We're thinking that expenses like that would be suitable for the NUCO account.
Right, if that's part of its fundraising activity, they did it to raise money for a charitable thing, then that's the expense of doing the fundraising. That happens all the time.
What if it's not fundraising but community building? Is that the same? Same purpose?
That's not considered a charitable purpose for community building. So they say, the IRS says community groups and things like that aren't considered charitable. So no, that would be, that would not be, that wouldn't be, you could do it, you could raise the money for the regular entity, but if people were saying, oh, I want to give you tablecloths, can I deduct the money for the product that I'm giving you? We'd say no, because it wasn't going to to a charitable purpose, quote unquote. I think that's going to be the hardest thing to kind of sort out. And I'm still kind of looking at what other block associations are doing. Some are charity, some are not.
Well, so like a
Pardon me?
Halloween get to longest people, all of these are community building, not charity building. So they're not able to be sourced by this NUCO.
Not if they're not for a quote charitable purpose, which has to be, the IRS is saying community groups is not considered a charity.
So I think that raises a question, and I'm thinking of a 2x2 grid in my mind. One question is, what are the restrictions for revenue for old co, new co? And the other is, what are the restrictions for expenses or money going out for old co and new co? And I think a question would be looking at our expenses for the past year, for example, and how many of those expenses would be legitimate expenses for NUCO?
That's a good way to look at it. Let me look into that and get back to you.
And it might be that if 90% of our expenses are events like the Halloween parade or like the longest table or other community building events that are not valid expenses for NUCO, then we might be getting a lot more revenue for NUCO because people want to be able to donate their donation or deduct their donations to NUCO. But we'll have money in that account that we can't transfer to Old Co and we can't use for all the uses that
That's
for money, which might be a fatal flaw with this plan.
I see what you're saying. I think you're right. I got to drill down a little more onto what are the kinds of things block associations do, and I'm trying to see what other block associations do that are considered charitable, because like I said, the IRS has said specifically community organizations are not considered charity.
Okay. David, getting that information would be very helpful. Debbie, I know you have something to say, but Peter's hand was up. So Peter, go, and then Debbie, you're next.
Okay, thank you. One way, because we have the same situation with Park to Park, but because and for example, residents of the halfway house are paid for their work on our weekly street cleanup, Street Love, but our fiscal sponsor for all of that is the Columbus Amsterdam Business Improvement District. They are a nonprofit. So we provide a grant to CABID, is the short for Columbus Avenue Business Improvement District, and they take care of the finances, but we are actually making a grant to Columbus Avenue Amsterdam Business Improvement District, which is a 501c3. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that if one charity makes a donation to another charity, that really passes the smell test and is okay. I've done this with other nonprofits for 501c3s that I'm involved in, and there's never been a problem in transferring money from one nonprofit to another nonprofit. And from there, it's really not the minutia of how the expenses are dispersed and how the grant money is used does not affect the grantor.
I see.
So is that your understanding too? And would that be a way around this?
That's what I thought was kind of the genesis of this, was one 501c3 wanted to give money to us and we weren't a 501c3. So yeah, I think, but for example, if you wanted to raise money to make a donation to another charity, we want to raise money to fix up a playground or do something else, that's okay. That's not a community development. That's,
as long as it's another 501c3, we can do that. Okay, so that's a very, basically, we create a fiscal sponsor agreement, since we know and have such good experience with Cabot, I think they're like the logical choice. And then when we do an activity like this, we do a restricted grant to Cabot, and they disperse that. This is how people, residents of the halfway house, are paid. And the same from youth ambassadors. There's a grant from donors to Park that goes to the bid, and they are the fiscal sponsor. And we have a fiscal sponsor agreement with us that sets all of this out and makes this relationship clear. So I think, the possible solution to what we're getting stuck on is to have a nonprofit fiscal sponsor to manage these kinds of activities for us.
Yeah, if that's things we want to do. I mean, if we want to, if we want to have an event to raise money for another charity, then that's the way you could do it.
Okay.
But
Debbie,
right.
you go ahead.
Yeah, two things now. But the first one was I just wanted to confirm my understanding of the Block Association is community building. Like these are the events that we want to be doing, not to be somewhere else. So I think for sure it's worth solving. But when you give the idea of the fiscal sponsor, is that instead of being a 501c3, Peter, or in addition? Because I always thought about fiscal sponsor as
it's being an addition. So, for example, for Street Love, they collect the waivers just like they did for Longest Table. It was the same thing. It's the same arrangement. In fact, the waiver agreements and all of that I had a hand in helping them write are identical. So everybody who worked, who was paid at the Longest Table, was paid through a grant that the Block Association made to Columbus Amsterdam bid, and they took care of the collecting the W-9 information, having each one of the workers fill out a waiver. They are
and
paying
so
them,
so
and they will
yeah.
file the 1099s and all of that with the IRS. And by the way, they are audited every 6 months. They're closing their fiscal year now.
It suggests to me, I guess what I'm saying, Peter, is it sounds like we wouldn't need to be a 501c3 because we could do it through the fiscal sponsor, as we just did.
We would still need to be the 501c3 because in order for people to make donations to us, who can only make donations to charitable organizations like from foundations and such, or people who are still itemizing and taking it as a deduction on their taxes or any other reason, which they can't do now, they want that. My concern about that is I know that it's a functional workaround and it's an arrangement that, Peter, you have successfully used with Cabot and other organizations. And I agree that the IRS isn't looking very closely, but I'm not feeling sure. I would need to have a little more research or certainty. I'm not sure that that's actually legit because our money, although we're making a grant or Street Love is making a grant to the bid, they're turning that money into paying people. And if we're not allowed to pay people because it doesn't fall under the definition of charitable, then if somebody really was carefully following the money, why would they be allowed to?
I think part of it depends on what you're paying them to do. Paying to be a community, watch guard, whatever, is different than paying people who are, cleaning up public spaces on the sidewalk.
Is it?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I'll check on that though. It's a very fair question.
And we should also probably check on the question of whether the newsletter is actually a charitable thing, because it's really intended not just for the people who are contributing to the funding that we have, but it's really discussing a wider set of things. It's more of a cultural statement. Can you check on that one too?
David, when you're digging into what actually is legit.
Yep.
That's
Yeah, I think also, Gary, I recall you did some research with other block associations that had fiscal sponsors as a way of not having to create their own 501c3. Do you remember what, if anything like this came up in the course of your research with that?
You know, I'll have to go back and look at it again. I didn't dig in very deeply into these. I just wanted to understand whether their agenda was any different from ours. And in most cases, in block associations were doing exactly what we're doing. They were 501c3s, and so that's what led to my conclusion that we should take a hard look at this.
But I do know that, and I totally appreciate your concern, Hetty. But the fiscal sponsor arrangements, for example, I had a nonprofit, still exists. It's called Vision Hero INC, and we created programs for DOT, and we had to have separate fiscal sponsors in order to create this program, which we had to pay people to create. And this was like a city requirement, and the city agencies all had, a long list of requirements, and one of them was that you have another fiscal sponsor. So the concept of fiscal sponsorships seems to be very well established among nonprofits as a way of doing needed things. And I do recall that Gary, in the course of the research with another block association, that was using a fiscal sponsor that does nothing but help block associations get started, and they take a piece of the action as an administrative fee for that. That's their sole purpose in life, that he discussed that, but I don't remember exactly what his findings were. But yeah, fiscal sponsorship, I think, is an area that might be helpful for us to understand better
Got it.
what we can do without violating the spirit or the letter of the law, Hetty.
Could I share my screen? 'Cause I made up a little chart. Basically, if I'm understanding this correctly, we've got Old Co and New Co. On the revenue side, Old Co is not tax deductible for donors. New Co would be. On the expense side, Old Co is unlimited in how it can spend its money. This should be expenditures. New Co, however, is limited. It can't be used for community building. It can be used to give money to another 501c3. And as far as transfers, money can go from Old Co to New Co. Money cannot go from New Co to Old Co.
That's very clear, Rich. Thank you.
So for
Thanks.
me, the big question is, if we start getting a lot of money in New Co, but we're limited in how we can spend it, we're
That's a
gonna
problem.
drain our money out of Old Co over time. We're gonna have a lot of money in New Co that we're not able to spend. And so the question I have, which again is for Gary, Ethan, and David, is if we look at all of our money that we spent in the past year, where did it go? The newsletter, payments to the bid, where else did our money go, and which of those expenditures are eligible for New Co spending and which are not? And if we find that 90% of them are eligible for New Co spending, then it makes sense. If we find that 90% of them are not eligible for New Co spending, then we run the risk of creating an entity that ends up getting a lot of donations because people would rather give money to New Co, but that we can't spend that money.
Right. And that's exactly what we need to find out more about.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you it's a very helpful chart.
Why don't you share that document, Rich,
Yeah,
with all of us, including David, because it really does clarify things nicely.
Thanks.
I am going to propose that we move along because we're an hour in and we've not covered very much of our agenda yet. David, thank you.
Oh, thank you all. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Bye.
All right. Let's move along and see if we can cover some ground quickly. I'll feel better about where we are on the agenda and what time it is. Bloomingdale Bites, Amy, any news on that?
Only that that the bid met with Ira Deutschman and Beth Krieger from the Upper West Side Cinema Center. They're totally on board. They're very excited about this. The idea is it's the usual setup where we have restaurants that donate food and we invite the community. We charge them a nominal amount for the food, and then there's a program. And in this case, the program is basically cinema trivia, maybe limited to New York, maybe limited to the Upper West Side. We're not sure. They're going to work that out. And they're up to, they like the idea of showing some kind of short or set of clips with some kind of theme. So they're working with the bid on it. So we're set for, I think it's October 9th, 6 to 9 p.m. It's a Thursday night. As before, we would try to promote it in our block association. West 104th would do the same with theirs. Hopefully BAIP also. And the Cinema Center people have a huge mailing list, and it's too big to present this, try to get them all to come. I mean, we don't have the space for that, so we're going to still try to keep it neighborhood based. But it's moving right along, and it's going to happen, so it's very exciting.
Thank you. We don't need to do anything.
No,
At the
Erin
moment.
hasn't set up with another meeting yet, and the beauty of this for us is they're going to run with it, and we just need to get volunteers and support it the way we have in the past.
So it'll have to go in the newsletter for September.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Good, thank you. Anything else on that topic? Okay, Ethan, do you want to talk about reminders to contributors?
Sure. So I believe we left off last month with a decision if we want to go forward with this or not. I'm not sure, Hetty, I believe if I understood, you were going to speak with Amy and kind of discuss, or maybe I
have no
misunderstood.
recollection of that.
Oh, I sent you an email like a week ago.
Me?
No, Ethan.
Oh, did I miss
Because I
something?
think I was supposed to get the information for you and put the language together, but wasn't exactly clear. So you and I should meet off this meeting and
Yeah,
just
let's do that. And to keep this moving, because I know this is,
yeah.
I don't want to hold this
Okay.
up. I can put something together and I'll keep this real simple. Friendly wording. I think we should spotlight some of the things we've done. Longest table would be a great example, of course.
Mhm.
The logistics, I know we talked about last time, the technicals come from our database. The email addresses into a mail merge. So really it's the template and the wording. So Amy, I'll put something together and I'll send it to you in the next, let's say, week. That works.
Great.
My question is, are we sending an email to people before, when we notice that they're about to need to contribute again, or are we waiting till they lapse for a quarter? What's our plan? What do you think?
That's good. That's a good question. It could go either way.
How about
It
both?
could go either way.
Both.
Yeah.
Or both?
Yeah,
could have
I don't want to
different
send too
wording.
many. Yeah,
No,
maybe
I mean,
maybe like 2 emails and yeah.
Right, when we notice that you usually make your annual contribution in X, just a reminder it's coming due. And then we can give it a few months after, and if we see that somebody who was supposed to make an annual didn't, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is we want to allow, then we follow up with a different reminder.
Okay. So
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. 2 reminders, one before, one a few months after.
Yeah, we can hammer all that out, but it's going to affect
Yeah.
the wording.
Yes.
So, Amy, when you and Ethan discuss, see what you think.
Okay.
So apologies for if I misunderstood from last month the next steps, but we'll get this moving. And yeah, Amy, I'll be in touch in a few days.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you. Peter, I have shared street next, including the card for the Hort.
Oh, yes, thank you very much. So we had a, shall I include street love in this too? We had a very good street love today,
Sure.
including Celia's neighbor from the Broadmoor, who was able to join us. Rick Koffler is his name, and he was terrific. I sent everybody a movie, so I hope you enjoyed that. We still have like 7 people from the halfway house who are coming now regularly. I had mentioned this to Hetty. We're not inclined really to turn anyone away at this point. It's $26 per person, and we'll see. So far, we are within our budget. I will come back to the board if more is necessary. There's nothing new to report on the status of the repaving of the street that I detailed at the last meeting, or any plans for changing the design of the street. DOT has not informed us of anything that they have in that department. So that's kind of it on the shared street and street love. So you got a twofer.
Thank you. And so concise, really appreciate it. Do you need anything from any of the board members on the Hort card?
Oh, let me just show you all and ask if any of the directors haven't signed it. I'm going to just get it and show everybody how it looks. So as our directors had passed a resolution, but we never got around to sending a thank you to the Hort for maintaining the planters, and they were out there the day before in the 100-degree heat. And the thank you card, which is signed front and back, we have
It's
hundreds
blurry, Peter, because it's not on your person. Hold it right on your chest. I think that'll be better. Yeah, then it's in focus.
Okay. So I don't know if and I can put a file. It simply says a big thank you to NYC DOT and the Hort. And it says, want to extend your gratitude to the New York City Department of Transportation, NYC DOT, and the Horticulture Society of New York, the Hort, for their work in beautifying West 103rd Street with the 30 planters installed on our shared street in 2023. The Hort continually works to maintain these planters. Every season, they refresh the plantings with new flowers so our street looks its best, most recently on a very hot Wednesday, June 25th. These planters bring joy and beauty to our neighborhood, and we are grateful. We invite you to sign your name below if you wish to show your appreciation. And that's all it is. And we passed this around at the longest table. We got hundreds of signatures. I think most people from the Block Association, the directors, signed this as well. But anybody who hasn't, let me know, and I will bring around the card for you to sign if you'd like to add your name to it. So who here hasn't seen the card or signed it? Amy, I'm surprised. Gary, you did sign it.
Peter, you could, rather than make you bring it to me, you can sign my name. I saw it and I didn't get a chance to sign it at the.
Okay. Anybody else here who wants to sign it or wants me to
Ginger,
sign it?
go ahead.
Ginger.
Yes, you can. Ginger, I would like to have you sign it if you're happy you would do
Okay,
that.
I'm going to have Casey sign it, so it looks a little different. Okay,
Thank you very much.
you're very
Great.
welcome. I think they'll really appreciate it. It's
And then Peter, you'll go ahead and submit it.
yes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have Cabot has it, since it's an 11 by 17 sheet, they have a scanner that will scan all of these things, and they're going to scan all of them, and I will send them to that same DOT list that we use to invite people to the longest table with, which is basically everybody there who needs to be thanked. And
If
I think
getting
that
over to Cabot to get it scanned turns out to be cumbersome and you want to go to see Nanu at best, authorized expense.
Okay, thank you for that. So that's it. I think they'll be very grateful. They work so hard and so well, and they train a lot of their staff on our street too. So we're so fortunate to have this. Deborah had said, when the shared street down at 22nd Street, they don't have anything like 30 planters that we have on our street. So we're very, very fortunate that they actually, unlike street trees that the city plants, but they don't maintain at all, that they actually maintain this regularly. They monitor the rain and come around with a truck and water if they need it. So the reason why they look so well is because they actually are maintained by the Hort. So they generally they really do a great job. So it's nice to say thank you.
Always a good thing.
And thanks for the reminder, Hetty.
You're welcome.
I forgot all about the thank you.
God, I'm glad we're finally getting it done so long after we resolved to do it. All right, newsletter. We're coming up on the fall issue. Amy and I have started some discussion about timing and deadlines. We have to get in touch with Ariana to see what's going to work for her schedule. We usually do not aim for Labor Day weekend because people really aren't paying attention to life again yet. If they've been away for the summer, they're focused on getting their feet landed. If they have kids, they want to get them into school. And Labor Day weekend this year is so early, so not doing that. We'll aim for distribution one of the 2 weekends just following Labor Day. Labor Day is on Monday, September 1st. It's as early as it possibly can be. So one of the 2 weekends after will be good enough. Sometime between now and then, I have remembered that I need to draft something about looking for input on the shared street. That's something that we had said we were going to do, then we didn't do again for all different valid reasons. But it's time to do it. And I know that we need to word it carefully. And I know that we need to make it clear what kinds of input we're seeking. And we're going to do our very best to make sure we hear from as many constituents in the community, not just the nays, not just the yays. We really want to get as accurate feedback as we can on this. And I'll put something in writing and just throw it out there and get the conversation started, and all will have a chance to weigh in. Peter, your hand is up.
Yes, I wanted to ask Hetty, my one thing that we want really to make sure of is that everybody understands what we're talking about when we talk about certain elements. And were you the newsletter editor way back in 2009 when that first survey ran in the Block Association newsletter?
I believe so, with the colored paper and the numbers and all the things.
2009 or 19?
2009.
Yeah.
So what I can do, I can email around pictures of what you did, which I thought was really, really good because it had a drawing of a curb extension. And I think I remember working with you on this and a picture of how it looked. And then you were asked, I like it, I don't like it, and make a comment or something like that. So you really had a chance to explain each one of the elements. So, and as we know, some of these things are complicated. So, and Rich actually ran some numbers at the request of CB7 that showed that a key safety objective, and again, there were 29 injuries that were reported to the city in a 10-year period prior to the shared street, and there have been 0 since then. Is that right, Rich? So, data like, safety objections and speed limits and things like that, some of these are fairly technical. And I just want to reference one that Gary brought up. And
Peter, I'm going to cut you off
Okay.
because this is all stuff we're going to work out as we
Okay.
craft this article. We're not going to work the details
Okay.
out tonight. And
Okay.
you have the broadest perspective, and Rich, I'm glad you have numbers, and all of that's going to be woven in somehow, some way. We don't yet know what it's going to look like. But right now
Okay.
we're talking about the newsletter as a more
Okay.
general concept. And we will circle back and make sure we do it right when we
It
do
was
it.
it was a lot of space is so keep
Yeah.
that in mind.
Yeah, I expect it to take some space.
Yeah, okay.
Hetty, cognizant of your just having cut Peter off, and I know we're not like getting into detail on it, but I do think we should ask something about the longest table, and maybe a frequency question, or maybe did you attend, or something, just to because it is a chance to get feedback on a super successful event, and
Right.
just see what people think.
Okay, thank you, Rich.
Can I say a couple things about the newsletter?
Okay, and then I have one more when you're done.
Okay. Probably the deadline is going to be mid-August, but we'll send out something in a few weeks to give people enough time. Debbie, if you're willing, I would love for you to write the piece about the longest table. And
Sure.
but it's important that you give yourself credit. So if you'd rather not put your name on it and just have it come from the newsletter and say all these wonderful things about Debbie Getz and what she did, I'm fine with that. Either that or I'm going to put it in later. But anyway, I would love for
She
you to
can do
write
it with, what about she writes it and we do a little sidebar? There's also this guy Bob Getz I've heard of who did an incredible, who I don't know that he got credit in all the credits, but driving in so many ways that
I think she was driving. Weren't you driving it? You were driving that thing.
Oh, sure. It all happened. It all got done.
he did a lot of work.
No, I'll happily write something, and then maybe you can add to it or byline it or whatever. But yeah, happy to capture the event.
Okay. And photos, if people have photos, that would be
Yeah.
useful. And other than that,
We have 24 pages.
I
Amy?
know it's gonna, but anyway, Hetty and I are
It's
gonna
going to
put
be
up-
spiral bound with combs.
maybe it's part 1 and part 2, and the next issue has more.
We'll figure
Anyway,
it out.
Hetty and I will come up with some kind of outline of what articles we think we have, and then hopefully there'll be enough space for everything we want to include.
Right. And that maybe this issue will really focus on those 2 priority things, and everything else will just get little bits.
And don't forget, we have to announce the Halloween party and make sure Mary's on board with that and everything else.
And Barking Day coming up.
Of course.
Yeah,
How
you're
could we
gonna have
miss
to,
Barking Day?
maybe Peter, you can write something about that or have some, yeah. Okay, sorry.
I think if we have one big upcoming event thing that should, otherwise you're really going to run out of space. And that worked well with Make Music New York and The Longest Table too. There was a lot of co-promotion, and those events were just, so close together. That helped.
All right. My newsletter item is an email that I recently received that I wanted to read to you. Hello, my name is Slavik, and I own VIP Fitness at Broadway and 106. I specialize in helping my clients maintain mobility and independence from midlife into old age. If you think this would be of interest to any of your members, I would love to chat with them or offer a trial session. We also have a neighborhood discount. We have a nice community feel here, and we like to think of ourselves as the neighborhood gym. Please feel free to give your members my details. Thanks for reading, blah, blah. So before I answered him, I needed to check in. Do we want to do a business profile as an article? Do we want to see if he wants to be an advertiser and do something in his ad that says, you know, free trial, you know, for block association members? You know, what do you think? Anybody have thoughts on this? Terrence, do you have thoughts? Ginger, you go ahead. Terrence, you'll go next.
Yeah. Well, perhaps you could consult with Terrence, you know, because sometimes we have, someone puts an ad in, we also have an article.
Right. We try not to make it seem like it's a quid pro quo, but sometimes we do that.
Right. But if anybody's offering, you know, a trial to come in, you know, but then we speak about, you know, his history on the block and how he came to be here and all that.
Right. Terrence, what do you think? We don't hear you yet. Mute and unmute again. Your lips are moving, but we can't hear you.
No. Okay.
Do you have a volume for your microphone? Is that a thing?
Terrence, you may need to restart your computer and try and rejoin.
All right. If you want to weigh in by email, you could do that too. Peace too.
You could put it in the chat, Terrence.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Sure.
So I think we should do something. I think it's great that he's volunteering to, you know, reaching out, and you want to go talk to him and see if he likes the idea of advertising and if he needs Ariana's help doing something that says, you know, free session for Block Association residents. Okay. Thank you, Terrence.
Terrence is all over it.
Terrence is running. Well, I will send him an email. I will CC you on it so he knows you're on it, and we'll figure it out. And if it seems to you like what he's looking for is bigger than an ad, let us know, and you can even let him know that sometimes we do run a profile of a local business, although that's not going to happen for September, I feel quite sure, given what we do have to include in September. But, you know, it could happen upcoming. And it could be mentioned even in the on Broadway column. If he's on Broadway, we can mention, by the way, see the ad on page whatever. This guy's running a special offer for Block Association members. Okay. Anything else on newsletter? All right. Next item is the CB7 cabinet, and is there any news on any topics, including the motorcycles?
Yes, we met today. First of all, I told them all about the longest table event and what a success it was, and told them if they're interested, contact me and I'll get them in touch with Debbie, because they may want to do it for their own block associations.
Right.
Yes, I brought up the motorcycle that is on Hetty's corner that is illegally parked. And what the strategy they want to pursue is yet one more 311 complaint. And then they want to see what happens. And if the same thing happens where it's just closed and resolved with nothing being done, they want you to send that. They just want a trail of it so that then they can go and pursue it.
I'll report it again, because the one that's there right now does have a license plate on it. So
Right,
it
that's
can
the
be
guy-
ticketed.
Right. Okay.
And I got the name of the guy from the Broadmoor. And I spoke to our community affairs officer at the longest table and explained what's up. And he said that there's a unit that he can call and he should be ticketed, but I don't know if anything has happened.
And it's still sitting there.
I haven't been there in a bit, so I don't know.
Okay. If it is still sitting there, if anybody, I don't know if Celia can take a look, or anybody who passes by, just see if it's still there. You should give his
It
name.
was there about a week ago. I noticed it.
Okay.
I've seen it. I started noticing it after last meeting. I'm sorry to interrupt, by the way.
Okay.
I just wanted to add that it was there about a week ago.
Yeah,
I can
it
look
was there
tomorrow,
when
though.
I left the city last Sunday, for sure.
All right. So Hetty, I think according to what Max said, he wasn't at the meeting today, but what he told both of us, I think you should forward that name to him.
Okay, I'll
And
do
see-
a 311 report and I'll forward that name.
Yeah. Okay.
I have his address, his apartment number. He was not responsive to conversation from me. The guy who owns the motorcycle.
And the derelict motorcycle, is that still on Broadway on the corner?
Yes, a week ago it was, but I
Yeah.
haven't.
Okay.
Okay. Peter, any news on the security survey?
Yes, we have very good news, is that Wilbert Wilbert Garcia, the who got his DACA renewed, just got his work permit renewed, and the person who Daniel had selected to substitute for him took a job as a chef, so he was not able to pick up where Wilbert left off, but Wilbert's back on the case as of tomorrow. So hopefully we can move that P up the hill.
Okay. Moving right along.
Big apologies from Daniel for the delays.
Things happen. Last item under old business is dog waste signs. Ariana designed one with input from me and from Peter. I sent it to Nanu to get a price quote to get 8.5 by 5.5. So imagine a regular sheet of paper cut in half, you know, holding it the regular portrait orientation, cut it in half. It would be the size of 1/2 of the sheet, $3.50, which seems very reasonable to me. Before I would put in an order, I want to go over there and see the material and make sure that we're all talking about the same stuff. But he seemed to know what I was talking about. And the price doesn't really matter because it's a copying job, whether it's the dark green and the yellow, like the plaque form that we had looked at. So I think that's a very reasonable amount, given that we don't need thousands of them. We just need, you know, a bunch to put one in each tree well. So I think this is a project we're going to be able to move along with.
Yeah, I think it needs to be on waterproof paper though, or whatever.
Yeah, it's not paper. It's a sort of plasticky. Imagine corrugated cardboard, except it's not paper. It's some sort of plasticky, lightweight stuff. But it has that sort of egg cratey in between the two sides of it. And you get like a metal, it comes with like a metal hoop that you then stick into the ground. So I will follow up with Nanu some more and make sure that we're all talking about the same thing before we go ahead and start printing. If somebody, I suppose we have a map. We have that tree map. If it's accurate, that should tell us how many we would need if we want to put one in each tree bed. Peter, as far as you know, that map is correct?
Yes, it's you know, maybe it's grown by 5, but other than that, it is correct.
Okay, we would
Oh,
get
well-
extras anyways because we're going to need to replace them from time to time.
Yeah, I would say maybe 20%, and we can do that as part of Street Love to make sure that there's one in each one of the wells.
They're keeping your
can
eye
you-
on whether they're there.
Can you run the text by me once before it's finalized? There was
Absolutely.
a comma I wanted put in. I'm not sure it ever made it in.
Okay.
They're going to be pooping all over that without that comma.
The commas matter. There was a very popular book a few years ago. Lynn Truss was the author. It was called Eat, Shoots, and
Eat
leaves.
shoots and leaves.
Yeah.
And the one that I love the best is a T-shirt I've seen that says "Let's eat, comma grandma," and then it says "Let's eat grandma" without the comma. Commas matter. You will never convince me otherwise. All right, that completes our old business. New business was Janet, but I don't think Janet joined us.
I emailed her about an hour ago and said, "Are you coming?" and got no response. So
All right, so we'll put
Well,
her in September.
yeah, whenever she comes, we'll talk about it.
Right. All right. I think that means we can adjourn if we care to the public meeting and move into executive session, unless anybody has any additional thoughts, topics, comments, questions, compliments, enthusiasm for Debbie. Somebody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, so we're adjourned.